As we get closer to the end of the Stanley Cup final, the votes are coming in for some massive awards. We know who won the Vezina, Lady Byng, and all of that, but where do the Carolina Hurricanes stand when it comes to their guys getting votes?
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun Friday show of the pod. As we're going to talk about Jaccob Slavin, where he finished in the Lady Byng and the Norris Trophy votes. Also going to talk about Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake also getting top 10 votes in the Calder Trophy race as well. And then finally talk a little of the American Hockey League and the Chicago Wolves as Scott Morrow and Bradley Nadeau take some high honors as well. But before we jump into all of this, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, we know a lot of the votes are coming in over the last, Thursday we saw, who won the Vezina Trophy, the Hart. Both those did go to Connor Hellebuck. We learned the other day that the Norris did go to Kel McCarr. Lady Byng on Thursday went to Anze Kopitar, and there's a bunch of other awards coming in. But, of course, this is a Hurricanes podcast. Where did some Hurricanes finish on the list? Like I said, we're going to talk about Jaccob Slavin, Stankoven, Blake, and, of course, we're going to look at the AHL and Scott Morrow and Bradley Nadeau. But to kick off the show, we're going to talk about everyone's favorite defensive defenseman, the best one in the NHL, and that is one Mr. Jaccob Slavin. Now, Jaccob Slavin, for the Norris Trophy, which is, annually awarded to what is considered the defense player who demonstrates throughout the season the greatest all-around ability in the position, which is voted on by the Professional Hockey Writers Association, or the PWHA. And in the end, Kel McCarr won the award, his second in the last 4 seasons. Now, Jaccob Slavin did get his second highest ever appearance in the Norris Trophy voting. Of course, he finished 5th back in 2019-2020, and this is the third time he cracked the top 10, with the last time, being able to get votes back in the 16-17 season. But when you look at the 24-25, he did finish 8th, got 60 points. He got 2 third-place votes, 4 13th place votes, and 11 5th-place votes. He did tie with Thomas Harley of the Dallas Stars, but of course he got 1 second, 1 third, 7 fours, and 27 5th-place votes. The winner, Kel McCarr, by a massive landslide, 1,861 points, with 176 first-place votes, 13 seconds, and 2 thirds. Of course, if you ask me, Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets should definitely have won that award because he had 1,266 points, 13 first, 132 seconds, 38 thirds, 7 fourths, and 1 fifth. When you talk about a guy who played great all-around defense, I think Zach Werenski did definitely show that, had a career, was healthy pretty much all season for the first time in a while. But, goes to Kel McCarr. Can't take it away from the guy. He won the award. But Slavin, once again, at least gets into the top 10 for the third time in his career. Like I said, second highest. His best finish has been 5th. But at least he got 2 third-place votes. It's just one of those things where you look at the best defenseman in the NHL, and kind of makes the top 10, doesn't even make the top 5. It just goes to a lot of guys who mainly get points. I mean, Quinn Hughes points, Josh Morrissey points, Victor Edmond points, Rasmus Dahlin, Thomas Harley. It's just one of those things where you look at the award, it says it's all around ability at the position. I think that's where we all know at this point it's turned into a how many points are you putting up per season type of deal. And honestly, Zach Werenski, for me, showed more of a all-around defense to his game compared to some of the other guys who are in the top 5. But we all know Jaccob Slavin will just never be that guy to get 80, 90, 100 points in the season or even 70 points. But everyone says he's the best defensive defenseman in the AHL. But, of course, with the Norris, it's just turned into a points-based trophy. Every year it's, well, he should have gotten it. He actually shows defense, but it's just not the case anymore, and that's why it's another year of the NHL just needs to come up with a Paul Coffey or whatever you want to call it trophy for the best defensive defenseman and give it to him, because you got a Selke for the best defensive forward in the league, of course, with all the other forward awards. So why not do it for defense? I don't think the defense should just get one award, and it's the Norris, and that's it. At that point, if you're gonna have a Selke trophy for a forward, you gotta make a defensive trophy, an actual defensive defenseman trophy for a guy like Jaccob Slavin, who actually plays defense. But unfortunately, he once again gets stoned for a trophy. They definitely should win by all definitions of what the trophy actually stands for. Now, looking at the Lady Byng. And, of course, Jaccob Slavin has won this award a couple times, did tie with Ted Lindsay a while back. And it's just one of those things where, this trophy is actually awarded to the player adjusted to have exhibited the best type of sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct combined with a high standard of playing ability by the PHWA. Of course, Jaccob Slavin did have the third most first place votes with 33, did win the trophy back in 2020, 21, and 23, 24. But this time he does finish fourth, 760 points, 33 first, 36 seconds, 22 thirds, 17 fourth, and 15 in fifth place votes as well, 17s across those boards. But in the end, it was Anze Kopitar of the LA Kings, 856 points, 51st, 31 seconds, 11 thirds, 22 fourth place votes, and 18 fifths. And, of course, rounding out the rest, Braden Point, 793 points, 27 first place votes, and Jack Eichel, 782 points, 34 first place votes. And then in fifth, Nick Suzuki, 694 points. He had 8 first place votes and 35 second place votes. Then Mikhail Makar, Marc-Andre Fleury got there as well, Mitch Marner. But, this is another award where Jaccob Slavin, there's the year where Kyle Connor won it. Jaccob Slavin should have had a almost three-peat of getting the trophy, but unfortunately, not the case, and then this time finishes fourth. Does, like I said, had the third most first place votes with 33, had the second most second place votes with 36. So it goes to show that Jaccob Slavin's at least getting some recognition that he deserves. Like I said, he did get 8th in the Norris. That's unfortunate, but he did get 4th in the Byng. Wasn't a finalist for that one, just finishing just outside of that, but hey, what can you do? It's one of those things where the Hurricanes just aren't going to have guys who are going to win individual awards. I mean, the NHL even announced they're all first and second teams in the league as well. And 4 Tampa Bay Lightning got in there. A couple, Winnipeg Jets. There's some Colorado Avalanche. David Pastrnak from the Bruins. No Carolina Hurricanes made the all NHL team and stuff like that. And, of course, looks like there's going to be probably a Carolina Hurricane not taking home an award per usual, because it just is what it is at this point. It's unless you're Rod Brind'Amour, where you get your one Jack Adams, and then Jaccob Slavin eventually wins a Lady Byng at some point. Like, he's already won it twice. I mean, when you get a guy who has three straight 8 penalty minutes or less seasons, 0 penalties in the playoffs. I mean, what more can you really do? But I guess some definitions of awards kind of get worded a little bit differently. But hey, what can you do? At least Jaccob Slavin did finish top 10 for the Norris and the Lady Byng once again. And maybe there's always next year that Jaccob Slavin can get a little bit more votes and maybe get some individual awards on his side. Now, speaking of which, we are going to talk about the Calder Trophy and how 2 Carolina Hurricanes rookies made that list. So stick around and we'll talk about that here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Well, how can you make your bets? Well, which players are showing up in the biggest moments? How could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? Well, you can do that with FanDuel, where they can give you all those options for making some parlays. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Well, we talk about Jaccob Slavin with the Lady Byng, also with the Norris, but now let's move over to the Calder voting. And of course, this is going towards the player selected as the most proficient in his first year of competition by the PHWA. That goes to the best rookie in his class for that season. And Lane Hudson, the Montreal Canadiens, won it by a massive landslide, 1,832 points, 165 first-place votes, and 26 seconds. And that's pretty much about it. Dustin Wolf of the Calgary Flames, 1,169 points, 15 firsts, 96 seconds, and 59 thirds. Macklin Celebrini of the Sharks, who a lot of people thought were going to win this award, 1,104 points, 11 first, 61 seconds, 106 third-place votes. And then Matvei Michkov with 4th, and Cutter Gauthier with 5th. And, of course, Matvei Michkov, 151 4th-place votes. Now, there were some Carolina Hurricanes that did at least get some votes for this award. Jackson Blake finishes 9th in the rookie race with exactly 9 points, and they were all 9 5th-place votes. So there you go. He at least did get some votes, got 9 of them, and they were all 5th place. But hey, you know what? He did get into the top 10 at least, did beat up Marco Kasper, who got 7 5th-place votes. And, of course, Mackie Samoskevich and a bunch of other guys. Logan Stankoven got in there as well. He got 7th in the voting. 22 points. He got 2 4th-place votes and 16 5th-place votes. He did finish behind Will Smith of the Sharks, who got 62 points, which were 56 5th-place votes. And like I said, Cutter Gauthier, 74 fifths. So at least you got some Hurricanes rookies that got some votes. Jackson Blake, 17 goals, 34 points in his rookie season. Of course, then the Hurricanes picked up Logan Stankoven partway through the season at the trade deadline. So, that does give you some merit that you actually had 2 Hurricanes that made the list of Calder trophies. At least we're getting something. That's the only thing I can say about that is, hey, you know what? Logan Stankoven did pretty good for the Carolina Hurricanes. When he came over, you got Jackson Blake. He did what he did, 17 goals, like I said, 34 points. Very underrated if you really think about how just for Jackson Blake's season where, it's a tough rookie class to be in overall, but just to come in and do what you did, and then even in the playoffs too, where he got 3 goals and 6 points. That's not bad for a rookie skater who was a Hobie Baker finalist, the previous season, and was able to do what he did this year as well. I mean, you're looking at a guy in 80 games, like I said, 17 goals, 34 points. He was a plus 10, 5 power play goals, 7 power play points, and he did all of this in the regular season, averaging only 13 minutes and 51 seconds. And how about this, though, too? How about 6 game-winning goals? Not bad if you really think about it for a guy who finished top 5 in goal scoring for rookies, but hey, what can you do? Did have a 12% shooting percentage with 142 shots and did score 17 goals. So you'll definitely take that if you're, Jackson Blake in your first full season in the NHL. And like I said, in the playoffs, 3 goals, 6 points in 15 games, 2 power play goals, averaged 16 minutes and 55 seconds of ice time. No game winners, unfortunately, but he did have 11.5 shooting percentage with 26 shots in those 15 games. So a little bit short of what he had in the regular season, but 11.5 in the playoff shooting percentage wise compared to 12 in the regular season. Not bad if you're Jackson Blake. And of course, let's go look at Logan Stankoven and what he did this season. Of course, this was split between the Stars and the Kings, but look at what we did with the Dallas Stars: 59 games, 9 goals, 29 points. Had 1 power play goal, 6 power play points, average 15 minutes and 6 seconds, 4 game-winning goals, 148 shots with a 6.1 shooting percentage. But with the Hurricanes, how about 19 games played, 5 goals, 9 points, 1 power play goal, 2 power play points, and did have a game winner and averaged 15 minutes and 4 seconds. So he only averaged 2 seconds less than what he did with the Dallas Stars. And that's playing a lot of it on the third line with Jordan Staal and Jordan Martinook. He did have 46 shots, had a 10.9% shooting percentage, so definitely a lot higher. With Carolina, of course, you're talking 40 less games, a lot less shots, but he did capitalize on the goals where he needed to. And if you want to look at the playoffs real quick, 5 goals, 8 points in 15 games, 2 power play goals, 3 power play points, averaged 15 minutes and 33 seconds, did have 2 game winners, which is very huge, 24 shots. How about a 20.8 shooting percentage? You will gladly take that if you're the Carolina Hurricanes. So it gives you a lot of great notions to know that while they did finish top 10 in votes for the Calder, and yes, fifth place votes only accumulate for 1 point, but you still got 2 guys in the top 10. Overall, really great regular season for both guys. Jackson Blake really came out on his own, proved why he should have been in the lineup, and did pretty well, things considered. And then, you get Logan Stankoven, put a lot of third line time as the season wore down, and even through the playoffs. Jackson Blake did get some top line minutes, played a lot of fourth line as the playoffs went along, but it gives you a good feeling of like the future looks very bright for the Hurricanes when you talk about these 2 guys who could be part of the core moving forward. Now, could things change this offseason, or maybe in the next couple of years? Who really knows? Anything can really happen when the Hurricanes are about ready to go all in and do what they need to do to take it to the next level. But from what the Hurricanes feel about these guys, you could be seeing Stankoven and Blake playing for the Hurricanes for a very long time. And after having seasons like that, it does look pretty good for the fact that, your first seasons, first full years in the league. I know Stankoven played some time with Dallas last year, but he did pretty good for the Hurricanes, and it makes you excited for 25-26, where you get a full offseason and a full season of Logan Stankoven to see what he can do in the Hurricane system. And Jackson Blake, he's guy's first year under his belt. He now knows what it is to be a pro hockey player, and now he just gets himself ready for his sophomore year and see where it goes from there. I mean, you look at Scott Morrow, you look at Bradley Nadeau, all those guys. I mean, they play mainly their first season or their whole first year in Chicago in the American Hockey League. But you had Jackson Blake force his way into the lineup and played his first full pro season in the National Hockey League, where he got 17 goals and 34 points. I don't know how you don't feel great about that kid and see what he can do in his second full season in the league. So the future is definitely looking bright for these guys, for Stankoven and Blake. At least, you got some recognition for the Calder voting. It's kind of tough when you had a class like this that just had Hudson and Wolf and Celebrini and Will Smith and all these guys. Hey, what can you really do? But, getting in the top 10 with 2 guys, cannot be upset about that for sure. In the future, definitely looks bright with these guys. Now, you want to talk about the future looking bright for the Carolina Hurricanes in the organization? Well, stick around and we'll talk about Scott Morrow and Bradley Nadeau here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posting on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. And like I said, it's just one of those things where if you need to put your job out there, you need to find the right people. Well, that's what Indeed is there for. They will actually be able to help you, match you with the candidates you're actually looking for and get your job filled quicker than ever. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Well, Indeed is all you need. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. When we talk about Logan Stankoven, we talked about Jackson Blake for those guys getting onto the Calder voting. Well, let's go to the AHL a little bit and talk about Scott Morrow and Bradley Nadeau as they've been named to the AHL Top Prospects Team. And this actually marks the first time 2 players from the same team earned an honor in the same season. You'd love to see it from these guys for the fact that they were able to get on there for this all prospect team, and the fact that the AHL too was, these are the guys that made this actual prospect list. You got Jet Graves of the Cleveland Monsters, Columbus Blue Jackets organization, Logan Stankoven, a defenseman from Laval Rocket, Montreal Canadiens, and of course Scott Morrow with the Wolves, Carolina Hurricanes, Dalibor Dvorsky, a forward for the Springfield Thunderbirds, St. Louis Blues organization, Costa Helenis from the Rochester Americans, Buffalo Sabres, and of course Bradley Nadeau of the Chicago Wolves, Carolina Hurricanes. And how about this for Scott Morrow? 13 goals, 26 assists for 39 points in 52 AHL games this season with the Chicago Wolves. And the fact this is his first pro season after coming out of UMass Amherst. You love to see it for him. Great job how he did in the American Hockey League for the Wolves, and that's even with him playing 14 regular season games with the Carolina Hurricanes with a goal and 5 assists for 6 points and nearly averaged 16 minutes of ice time. And, did make his Stanley Cup playoff debut as well, playing in all 5 games against Florida in the Eastern Conference Final. Now, another guy, of course, we've talked about him, and he's just really excited to see what he can do in another season, is Bradley Nadeau. He's just one of 5 players in AHL history to register 30-goal season before the age of 20. He led all AHL rookies with 32 goals and finished with 58 points in 64 games with the Wolves. And it just makes sense for the guy who, earned the Hockey East All-Rookie honors and was a Hobey Baker finalist as a freshman at the University of Maine, where Justin Poirier is going to be playing next year. So the Maine to Carolina pipeline is still playing very strong through the NCAA. And how about this too? He had 1 assist in his 2 NHL games they played with Carolina this season, and also skated for Canada in the 2025 World Championships with 2 goals. So not bad, all things considered, when you look at Scott Morrow, what he did with his 13 goals, 39 points in 52 games for the Wolves, and getting 6 points in 14 games with the Canes. And then Bradley Nadeau, 32 goals, 58 points in 64 games with the Wolves, and did get 1 assist in his 2 NHL games with the Hurricanes, and also played for Canada in the World Juniors. So like I said, you look at how bright the future is with Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake, what they did. You saw Scott Morrow, what he did in the regular season with the Hurricanes, why he got, some time in the playoffs, in round 2, and also in the, in the Eastern Conference Final. And then you also with Bradley Nadeau, 32 goals in his first pro season. I mean, he scored a lot of goals with Penticton in the BCHL, scored a lot of goals with Maine in the NCAA, and like I said, 32 goals in the American. This kid knows how to score goals, and that's what I'm saying. If you get the if you give these guys another extra year in Chicago, let them get their, get just some extra time in there. Because they're both these guys are young. Like Bradley Nadeau is just barely turning 20. Scott Morrow is not that much older at 21, 22. Give these guys an extra year of just development in the American Hockey League, and then we'll see what they, if they're ready for, 26, 27, or if at some point they are ready for this year. Why not? But you look at, Seth Jarvis is 23, Jackson Blake is, 21, Logan Stankoven is 22, Scott Morrow, Bradley Nadeau. There's a lot of good young prospects within the Carolina Hurricanes organization. Like I said, it has to make you feel good knowing that the present is so good with the roster they have and how great the future looks too. With just these four guys, and you're talking about Alexander Nikish, who's 23, who just finally came over. What's Felix Understorm going to do? How's Dominic Bandica going to be on the back end as well on the blue line? Nikita Kwap just got signed for his, ELC coming over from Germany. How is he going to play? Most likely going to start with Greensboro next year in the ECHL. But hey, that's some goaltending prospect. You definitely need to fix the pipeline a little bit there, but it's good to see for the fact you're talking about guys playing their first pro seasons and actually performing really well, especially Morrow and Nadeau, because those guys did get some nods, for some AHL All-Star stuff. Morrow didn't really get to play because he was called up to the National Hockey League, but still huge honors for him. Bradley Nadeau, like I said, you get a guy who's not even 20 years old and is one of 5 guys to ever score 30+ in his first season. Just before 20 is really huge. So it has to make you feel pretty good for the fact that you're looking at guys who are on the right track to eventually break into this Hurricanes, lineup at some point. And the fact that Nadeau people have already talked about him having an NHL elite level shooting already, and he's not even 20 yet. And look at 32 goals in the American is not easy to do. Just scoring 32 goals in general in hockey is tough. And then that's something against goalies in the American Hockey League. There's a lot of good goalies down there too, that are still developing. But there's some guys who can score goals, and there's still a lot of guys who played in the NHL that do play in the American Hockey League as well. We saw Spencer Knight for a while that's played down there. You talk about Spencer Martin. There is a Askarov over there from the San Jose Sharks. There is a lot of guys in the who've played in the NHL who have bounced back and forth that still play in the American and the National League. Dustin Wolf was even down there for a while too. Devin Levi. So there are some pretty good goalies that have AHL experience who have played in the American recently. So for the fact that you see Bradley Nadeau getting 32 goals, not bad, all things considered, for a guy who wasn't even 20 yet when he did it. So big props to Scott Morrow and Bradley Nadeau for getting 2025 AHL All-Prospects Team. And of course, Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake getting some Calder votes, and of course, Jaccob Slavin getting votes for the Lady Byng and the North. So it remains to be seen what happens next year. Do we get some guys to win some trophies? Who really knows? But, I guess time will only tell if we do get some individual awards come to the Carolina Hurricanes. But the next big thing that's coming in terms of, awards, nominations, all that stuff is the Hockey Hall of Fame. And hopefully, crossing fingers, Rod Brindamore finally does get that call, but only time will tell with that as well. But guys, that will be a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. If you're watching to check out Locked On AHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find AHL Game Night on Locked On AHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where you can check out my link trees in my bios to where you can find all of my written content at thehockeywriters.com. Definitely doing a lot of draft and free agency stuff as of late, so make sure to check those out. If you want to check out my other podcasts, well, it's the Search Cast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For this show, well, you can find Locked On Hurricanes on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, because I might just read it on the show. for YouTube. It's Locked On Hurricanes. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up so let me know if you like the episode as well. Share with all other Caniacs so they become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.